is what you're asking.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us this morning on the program. Well, we're expanding the conversation, like I said a while ago. I mean, moved away from what will happen in the states between today and tomorrow regarding the transition in the state. But, well, we'll come back to that again later today, sometime tomorrow for the most part, because we need to be sure what exactly has transpired ultimately, especially looking at it from the angle of what the APC and the PDP are now debating about inauguration, whether or not Governor Godwin Obaseki had an invitation extended to him to attend the inauguration. That's the story for a different time. But now let's talk about our dear continent, Africa, the issue of leadership and the question around what kind of leadership should be provided to move this continent forward. We'll take a quick break. When we return, that will be our focus. All right, so let's talk about Africa for a few minutes, everyone. The issue around leadership quality. There are people who have said that what we need in Africa is not democracy, as it is generally known in the western part of the world. But whether it's democracy or not, do we have the best kind of leadership, regardless of nomenclature, in Africa today, from end to end, whether it is West Africa, Central Africa, North Africa, or East Africa, even up to Southern Africa, for example. Some people say, well, beyond what name we call the kind of leadership we provide in Africa, why don't we see someone like former President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, blessed memory, as a model that every other president, every other leader on this continent can emulate? But that's in sharp contrast with what we are seeing in some other places, for example, like Zimbabwe, with the former president, Dr. Robert Mugabe. That's not the same thing if you come down to West Africa, like what we're seeing in our neighboring country, Cameroon, with someone like Dr. Paul Biya, for example, a man who has been in office for decades, only to be the second longest serving president alive on the continent today, just rightly behind the president of Equatorial Guinea, where some high-level scandal is beginning to rock the country, and that has been for at least about a week now. But in all of this, what must be done to change the narrative in Africa and the kind of leadership we provide, particularly from a political standpoint? We've seen coups, particularly 3 in the last few years in West Africa, the most recent being just July of last year in Niger Republic. The subcontinent still hasn't recovered from that, with negotiations still going back and forth as to whether or not Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic should return to the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS fold, or not. Some of those questions we would like to find in the course of our discussion this morning. I'm joined by Dr. Success Nkogo. He's a political activist, one who believes that Cameroon can become a light for not just West Africa, but for Africa. But then he says it's going to be some hard work, and there are people who are ready to put in the work to make that happen. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to you for jumping on this conversation this morning. And I'd like us to start from someone like Paul Biya. Somebody has said that Africans should not be very concerned about the term of a president, as they should be about the kind of leadership that that president or prime minister is providing. Paul Biya, the current president of Cameroon, is 91. He'll be 92 in about 3 months, in February of next year. He has been there 4 decades. What exactly is the concern of not just Cameroonians, but Africans about such leadership?
Thank you very much for bringing me into the studio today to talk about African politics and what is happening in our continent, especially in Cameroon, like you rightly said. First, as far as Africa is concerned, for the continent to be free, we need to free ourselves from every form of colonial influence, every form of colonial education. In fact, even the colonial religion. We need to free ourselves from colonial politics. The democracy that was introduced to us by the colonial masters is a democracy that doesn't work in Africa. Africa is over 65-year-old now, as I can count, but we do not have presidents in Africa that are truly elected by the people. And that is why most of them are not close to the people. We have a group of people who have hijacked Africa, who were imposed by colonial masters in the name of democracy. And they are there to benefit the interests of three categories of people. One, the colonial masters who imposed them at the head of the nation. Two, the elite class. Three, they themselves. While the common man is suffering. This is a structure, this is a configuration made by the colonial masters which does not benefit the indigenes of Africa and the common man in Africa. For this to change, we as Africans must reject the colonial political system. We must reject the colonial educational system. We must also reject the colonial religious system, so we can embrace an Africanized system that works for African. If we look at nations that have clearly rejected these colonial systems, these nations are thriving. Even though these leaders came to power just few years ago or few months ago, they are thriving and they are doing very well, other than the nations that are said to be democratic. I just do not like to hear this word democracy because it does not even work. They were told in school that it's government for the people, by the people, for the people. Yet, we see around that leaders are robbing about. They were not really chosen by the people, and things are not working in Africa. Now, coming back to Cameroon, Paul Biya has been in power for 43 years now. He was sworn in 1982 after a medical coup d'etat that was launched against President Amadou Babatura Ahidjo. He came to power, and since then, he has been in power. We had a presidential election in 1992 in Cameroon. It is said that Paul Biya lost the election. In fact, one of his campaign managers by name Albert Zongang, we can verify that, said recently that he was the campaign manager, he was one of the publicity, whatever, in their party, that Paul Biya lost the election in 1992. 1997, again, Nijon Fundi defeated Paul Biya, said by this same Albert Zongang, who was a member of the Paul Biya's government and was a member of his political campaign. 1997, he lost. Now, 2004, the same thing. 2011, the same thing. 2018, the same thing. And yet, Cameroonians are groaning in pain. We need a new system of government. Cameroonians are not happy with what is happening in Cameroon, and Africans as a whole are not happy that Paul Biya is not the only Cameroonian. Paul Biya is not the only Cameroonian. There are other Cameroonians that can lead the nation. For crying out loud, this man is of age. 92 years of age. That is an official age. The reality is that he's more than 92. And if a person cannot operate a computer, how do you expect a person to lead a nation? If a person cannot stand up for 2 hours straight, how can the person lead a nation? So I think that it's time for Paul Biya to consider another person to lead the nation, not necessarily from his family, not necessarily from his political party, but someone truly suits the aspiration of the population of Cameroonians.
That's interesting, the issue of succession in Africa. I mean, we have seen it being something that is driven by sentiments and emotions and all kinds of biases. It's either your son is succeeding you or it's your brother who's succeeding you. In some rare instances, it's your brother-in-law who is succeeding you. How do we also ensure that we create systems around this in such a way that we can have electoral processes that produce people based on merit, where we can say the processes are free, fair, and credible, whether it's in Cameroon or beyond Cameroon, for example?
I believe that Africa must reject every form of colonial structure in order for us to succeed as Africans, because the structure put in place by the colonial master is a structure that makes Africa look like a monarchy or oligarchy, where if I rule and I'm done, my son takes over or my friend takes over. When shall the son of a bike rider become a governor, a senator, or a president. The rich continue to be rich while the poor continue to be poor. That is not fair in an Africa that belongs to all of us. So I think that Africa as a whole must stand as one man to reject every form of colonial structure and embrace a new system. And we have proposed on several occasions a system of government called Afrisocracy, which is not democracy, but it has a little touch of democracy, socialism, and with Africanized approach that favors the culture and the values of Africa. I would believe that if that system is brought to place in Africa, everybody in every nation will have a share of the national cake, and people will be brought to power by virtue of competence, not connection or the money they brought to the table. People are buying position, people are buying presidency, people are buying position to be governors and senators and ministers. We don't need that. That's why when they go to office, they want to harvest because they invested their money to become what they are, and they want to steal back that money to recover what they invested. And after they are done with their tenure, they bring their son or their friend to continue stealing while the poor continue to be poor. That system does not favor Africa at all.
This is interesting because while Mugabe was still alive and sitting as the president of Zimbabwe, it was pretty much what we have in Cameroon right now. People were saying, even if Mugabe were to leave office, who is going to succeed him? In any case, how do you unseat someone like Paul Biya, for example, if you say, okay, let's have the argument, what you call superior argument of saying, we need to change, we need a change in government. You just talked about how that somebody had alleged that, look, this election was rigged, the other one after that, they were all rigged, for example. Now, my question to you is, what do you reckon could be the solution if there needs to be a change in the style of governance in a place like Cameroon?
First, we talked about Zimbabwe. Mugabe wanted to impose his wife before his departure from this planet, and the Zimbabweans rose as one man, and that ended. Mugabe had to quit. And today is not who Mugabe put in place who is the president of Zimbabwe. If Cameroonians can also rise as one man, the problem with Cameroon is that we are being divided by the regime in place. The regime is using a system of divide and rule. So if Cameroonians can ignore this tribalism and religion and all of these gimmicks of Mr. Paul Biya and the CPDM regime in place and unite themselves as one man, then we can defeat Mr. Paul Biya. Now, if a camp of divided lions can be defeated by a camp of united goats, if goats unite and they are strong enough in their unity, they can defeat any animal in the forest. So I believe strongly that if Cameroonians can come as one man, one voice, one ambition to unseat Paul Biya shall go. And 2025 is another opportunity for Cameroonians to rise as one man, to vote for the candidate of their choice, and to align themselves behind one candidate. And one thing that I should suggest to Cameroonians is this. Cameroonians should rally behind one opposition candidate. And for this to happen, opposition candidates should unite among themselves and do a primary where whoever emerge as the winner, every opposition leader aligns behind that person.
Would that be divided?
Yes. Once every opposition leader unites behind one person who have emerged as the leader of the opposition team, there is no way Mr. Paul Biya can defeat them. In 2018, we saw something similar to that, and we can do that in 2025. Cameroonians should forget about the aspect of partyism. They should forget about the aspect of tribalism. They should forget about the aspect of connection. They should focus on one objective: unity to defeat Mr. Paul Biya. And that begins with the opposition party. They themselves must not be greedy, because it is greediness that gives upper hand to the power that be. If the opposition party comes together, they can defeat Mr. Paul Biya.
What is really the grounds of Cameroonian people with Mr. Paul Biya? Is it the longevity of his rule, or the fact that he's probably not working and delivering the goods for the people?
First of all, Cameroonian people are not even happy with the regime in place. They're not happy with Paul Biya. he uses the weapon of intimidation, manipulation, and domination to keep himself in power. We have a lot of people in Nigeria, I don't want to call names, people like names start with V, something like that. One guy who is on the social media. We don't have such people in Cameroon. If you even rise as one.
Obviously, we're referring to the very dark man.
Very dark man. If we have one in Cameroon, he'll be killed or arrested and put to jail. I must tell you for free that some people are complaining about Nigeria, but I wish they try Cameroon, then they will know that Nigeria is very democratic. Because in Cameroon, we have senators that have been appointed, governors appointed. Nigeria, you can't try it. You must be elected. In Cameroon, we have people, activists who are earning their mind until people of House of Representatives are being arrested and questioned. You can't arrest and question a member of government in Cameroon. They are gods. They are superior to the law. Even Paul Biya is superior to the constitution of Cameroon. He violates the constitution like nobody's business, and nothing happens to him. Recently, we had a colonel who tortured a musician who is almost the class of Burna Boy according to Cameroon standard. Tortured that musician. The videos are there. We can Google. His name is Longe Longe. Nothing has happened to him. He has not been questioned once. It was on video. He tortured him, naked the man, and nothing happened. But here we saw recently a legislator that was just shouting at a certain Uber driver, and this guy was called for questioning. And I was told he even served 1 day or 2 days in the police. It can't happen in Cameroon. So Paul Biya is using intimidation, manipulation, and domination to silence Cameroonians. And I think Cameroonians have come of age not to fall for that anymore. There is no way you can kill all Cameroonians at once. If all Cameroonians rise as one man, Paul Biya cannot jail them all. Paul Biya cannot kill them all. And if he does, he'll be alone that will be left in that country, and nobody would like to remain alone in that country. So Cameroonians just need to summon the courage and face Mr. Paul Biya and face the regime and say, this has to end. There is no freedom of expression, no freedom of opinion. No governor can rise one day in Cameroon and say, I want to be president. They're not born aware.
So you cannot have this kind of interview on a TV station in Cameroon or a radio station. Is that the point?
I can have, because I am very courageous. I have had one, I can have, because I'm very courageous. We have few people who have such courage. We have few people. Some of them who have such courage have been corrupt. They have given them money to silence them. Just few people who have not fallen for that corruption. I have. There is nothing I have not said in Cameroon about the president or about the Secretary General of the Presidency. In fact, the Secretary General of the Presidency even sees me as a rival, and I've told him that unless God is not God, he will go to jail very soon.
Why would that be? Because he's serving under this government?
No, not because he's serving under this government. He's using the First Lady to manipulate the president, and he has taken control of the country. I blew the alarm about a year plus ago, how that there are various stages of coup d'etat which this particular person is launching. And the last one, which is military, we don't think it will happen because Paul Biya has solidified his military. But he has already launched an administrative coup d'etat, and it's successful. He has already launched, very soon there will be constitutional coup d'etat, which everybody is obvious, is all over the place. I had to say that about 2 years ago, and today people are seeing as a reality. He's using the position as the Secretary General of the Presidency, something like Chief of Staff in Nigeria. He's using that position to influence the First Lady, to advise the husband wrongly, and the husband signs decrees every day in favor of this guy. The Secret Service has been replaced by his loyalist. B, which is a very strong army force, has been replaced by its loyalists. Gendarmerie boss has been replaced by its loyalists. It's only the GP, Garde Présidentielle, who has refused to bow to him, and the police boss has refused to bow to him, but every other security boss is bowing to him. And the guy is taking advantage of everything in the country.
I want us to look at something real quick. I mean, for a man who has been in power for 3 years, that's an upwards of 4 decades.
Yes.
Apparently, for whatever is worth, he has set a standard already. Whoever wants to, as it were, take power over from a man like Paul Biya, what qualities should such a person possess?
For someone who wants to take power from Paul Biya, first, the person must be a Pan-African and a Pan-Cameroonian. That means that the person must not be friend to the Western powers. The person must not be friend only to the elites. The person must be a grassroots person whose agenda favors the common man. Because for so long, we have been ruled by people whose agenda favors just the imperialist or the colonial system, and the elites then plus those who are in power. So the qualities this person must have, number one, is that they must be Pan-Africanist and they must be Pan-Cameroonians. They must favor the cause of the common man in Cameroon, and they must dislike every colonial system in Cameroon. That's the most important quality. Once that is put in place, we need incorruptible people. We need courageous people. We need young people. And we need people who has Cameroon at heart, who can lay down their life for the sake of Cameroon. We don't need people who are stripping Cameroon of the resources and enriching themselves. We need people who can use all the resources of Cameroon to better Cameroon and Cameroonians. In fact, we don't even need people whose parents or who were former member of Paul Biya's government.
So you need people who are neutral.
Neutral people. People who have not had the opportunity, or whose members of families have not had the opportunity to rule Cameroon or to be in any position of power, so that they understand the hurt and they understand the suffering of the common man. These people will come to favor the cause of the common man. Outside of that, any other person, be he the son of a former minister, son of a former prime minister, son of a former vice president, a former governor, whatever, they will still come just to favor the cause of the elites, and also to favor the cause of the colonial masters.
There are speculations. I just want to bump in on you so that we just keep the narrative
yes, sir.
In perspective. There are speculations that some people like yourself who sound like this, yes, on the one hand, you care about your country, you love your country, and you want to see your country do well and hold its head high amongst the community of nations, even beyond Africa, for example. However, on the other hand, it is also believed that you want to have, as it were, an opportunity to lead the country instead of a man like Paul Biya. How much of truth do we have in that?
Yes, I have the ambition to be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Republic of Cameroon. I have such ambition, and I've declared my ambition already. And by the grace of God, I am the leader of the Cameroon Liberation Movement. It's a political party registered in Cameroon, and I'm going to run for the office of the president in 2025 October in Cameroon, and we are going to win by the grace of God, because our agenda is clearly for the common man. We are not interested to please any foreign government. We are not interested to please the elites. We are interested to please the common man. In fact, one of the very good things about our agenda is that we are going to slim the gap between the rich and the poor. If possible, there might not be any difference between the rich and the poor in our country, because equality is a right given to every human by God.
Bobby has not been able to do for over 40 years.
He cannot do it because he likes power and he likes resources for himself. He can't do it. He doesn't have the will. He doesn't have the powers to do such. But we are going to do that.
Let's talk about, there was a concept you mentioned a while ago, which you said is quite different from democracy.
Afro-theocracy.
Yes, talk to us about how that works and how you can push that, for example.
Afro-theocracy is defined as the African concept of governance that favors the community. It's close to socialism and has a little touch of democracy, but it is highly Africanized. Now, in Afro-theocracy, we favor the local tradition of the people, the culture of the people. In Afro-theocracy, the distance between the rich and the poor is very slim. In Afro-theocracy, we favor the cause of the common man and not the elites or the colonial masters. In Afro-theocracy, everybody feels he or she belongs to the country, and the national cake is shared to everyone equally. In Afro-theocracy, there's no marginalization. In Afro-theocracy, there's no injustice. In Afro-theocracy, the rich do not use the resources of the nation, or those in power use the resources of the nation to dominate over the common man. In Afro-theocracy, everybody is equal before the law. Contrary to what they have told us over the years, that democracy, justice, the justice and the democracy they presented to us doesn't work. In most African countries, including Nigeria, most powerful people dominate over the poor. Most rich people dominate over the poor. You hear people say, do you know who I am? He's referring to his financial position and his social status or his legal position before the government. That's what he's referring to. So in a physocracy, everybody is equal. In a physocracy, the people hold the authority responsible, and the people have the power to dismiss the authority anytime they want. But in the other case, the democracy they brought to us, they said we are the ones who selected the leaders. Yet, when the leader misbehaves, we don't have power. The leader only comes to us during the election. When they misbehave, we don't have power to dismiss them. And we want to reverse that, where the people can literally dismiss their president. They can literally dismiss their government.
In a place like Cameroon, for example, you are seen as a very controversial personality. How does that rub off on any chance that you could become the president of Cameroon?
Well, controversy is also a colonial word that was created to tarnish the image of freedom fighters or people who speak their mind the way it is. Controversy simply means that the crowd is on the other side, you are on the other side, and not everything that is popular is proper. Most of the times, people who are liberators are seen to be controversial. We have seen in other nations in the days of apartheid, Nelson Mandela was seen as controversial. But when he became the president of South Africa, everybody referred to him as the father of democracy in South Africa, even those who jailed him. So one can be controversial. One can even be a terrorist, according to the terms of some oppressors. One can even be whatever they choose to call it. But those are just appellations to tarnish the image of liberators, freedom fighters, who have the interest of the common man at heart. So, as it stands, Cameroon is having an 85% majority of Francophones and just 15% Anglophones. As I can speak to you, if there is a free and fair election in Cameroon right today, right now, we will win at least 90% in the Francophone zone and at least 85% in the Anglophone zone.
Let's talk about the Ambazonia movement.
Okay.
In Cameroon. What role does it play, and how much have you been involved in it?
When the Ambazonia movement started, first, I am allergic to marginalization and oppression. I am allergic to injustice. I am an Anglophone, don't forget, and I know the history of my country. I don't want to delve into that, but do not forget that before 1953, the part of where I come from in Cameroon were part of the Enugu House of Parliament. And we moved in 1953, 1954 and converged because we were marginalized by the Igbos and the Calabarians in Nigeria. So we moved and converged and formed our own state. Then, in 1961, President Amadou Babatunde Ahijo met our leader and said there's no point us separating. We can come together as one man and build a federated state. So we accepted as a people to build a federated state, and it was stated clearly that the day you are the head of state, I will be the vice. The day I will be the head of state, you will be the vice. And that resources will be shared equally. And everything was well defined, but that was 1961. So we agreed and entered into the relationship in 1961 by United Nations plebiscite. Few years later, our name was United Republic of Cameroon then. No, our name was Federal Republic of Cameroon. And their name was, before, their name was Republic of Cameroon. And our name was Southern Cameroon. Then we entered the relationship in 1961, and we were all called, the two parties were all called Federal Republic of Cameroon. Few years later, Amadou Ahijo single-handedly declared the nation by president, whatever he did, declared the nation the United Republic of Cameroon. Then, when Amadou Ahijo left, Paul Biya came and declared the nation Republic of Cameroon, back to the former name where they had. And we started seeing marginalization. We have an oil field that is in Southwest region. They took all the oil for themselves and never made any of us general manager. They brought French judges to English jurisdiction, brought French teachers to English section. And our lawyers protested. And when our lawyers protested in peace, they went and brutalized them, raped our girls, raped our students, killed some. And that irritated me. I decided to join the movement. I will always do so.
Are you still in the movement? Because
I left because the movement turned to something else that people were using it for settling. They were using it to kill the people that were already marginalized. They were using it to make money out of the people that were already marginalized. I could not be there. They were using it for kidnapping, for ransom. I could not be there any longer. So I left for the sake of my people. And a lot of people crucified me that I was bribed, I was giving me. I say it today and before the camera. There is no member of government that can say, that has said, that will ever say that they gave me 1 kobo for any reason. It is a decision. I have a conversation with the SDO of my locality. He's still alive. I have a conversation. What do you think we can give to you? I said nothing. I have a conversation with the Prime Minister. I sat with him because I said something like this. What do you want? I have the conversation with the Director General of the Secret Service of Cameroon, the equivalent of DSS here. I have a conversation with him. What appointment do you want? Nothing. I just need peace and equality. Let the national cake be shared. Nobody gave me 1 kobo. If anybody says they gave me 1 kobo, they should come and challenge me. Nobody gave me 1 kobo.
There's an election in Cameroon next year, apparently.
Yes, please.
Barely a year from today, for
yes,
example.
please.
And it is expected that election will produce a president, even though some people are still saying there's a pretty good chance Mr. Paul Biya is going to remain in office, staying alive and having good health and what have you. What should that candidate have in terms of whether it's educational background, experience, skill set, capacity, competence, whatever is required to provide leadership in the 21st century to move Cameroon from the point where it is now to where it should be heading, and use that as a basis to drive growth and development across West Africa?
Just put aside educational background, because if you want to include educational background, we have educated leaders in Africa who are doing worst. But
so it's not about academics.
It's not about academics. That is a system brought to us by the Westerners, who made us believe that you have to speak very sound grammar in order to qualify for presidency. That's total rubbish. The president of Burkina Faso is not speaking good French. His French is very poor, but he does very well in leadership. So you don't have to be academically correct or politically correct to be a good leader or liberator of a nation. So take academics out of it. Paul Biya came into power as a very good academician. He studied in the best school in France. But today his leadership is total failure. He has spent 43 years making wrong choices every time and then. So we don't have to put academics there. In terms of competence, competence to me is who has the interest of the common man at heart. That's the most important thing. And I think that Cameroonians should study first the manifesto of each candidate in order to know whose political program will suit the interest of the common man. That's the most important thing.
And you think you have that program and initiative?
We do. We are just the best. There is no number 2. We are just the best. Our political manifesto is there. Others are trying to copy, but they can't defend it. Others are trying to copy, but they can't see it in them. You know, when you are telling lies, people can read that in you. What we say is what we do. It's a passion. It's a reality in us. It's not just a practice. It's not just, we are not doing it out because of politics. Before this, we became political activists or political actors. We were passionate for total transformation, to liberate Cameroon, to liberate our country from every form of colonial system. We have said, for instance, we have a system in Cameroon where governors are appointed. We said when we become president, governors will not be appointed, they shall be elected. Today we have senators who have been appointed in Cameroon. We say when we become president, senators will be elected. Today we have a system of government where the parliament is dominated by 95% by the ruling party. Is that democracy? How can the ruling party has a parliament that is dominated 95% by their members? Then 99% of members of the government, they are all members of the CPDM party. Now, we have a group of people called SDOs and DOs. These were things introduced by Mr. Paul Biya in the 90s to minimize the powers of the local authorities elected by the community. People like mayors. Yes. So he now appointed the people called SDOs, Senior Divisional Officer, DOs, Divisional Officer. These people are supervising the chief, supervising the mayors. We are going to reverse that. As a matter of fact, we are going to crack down what we call SDO. There will be nothing called SDO in our country. We replace SDOs, senior divisional officers, and DOs with traditional authorities.
So you're going back to the African...
We are going back to the African concept.
Incidentally, time will fail us to continue with this discussion, but it's quite a long discussion to have. Then it turns out election in Cameroon is still almost a year out from today. That's October of next year. But we do understand that there have been vehement calls for a change of government in Cameroon, for elections to be conducted, for governance style to change. But we hope you and your movement are able to make this happen going into the election, and that people of Cameroon will throw their weight behind you. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Success Nkongo, a political activist, for coming to share with us about what is happening in not just Cameroon, but indeed in West Africa sub-region. We'll take a quick break, everyone. I will bring it back home in a minute. Jumai and myself will stay with us.
Thank you.
Global Morning is your ultimate destination for engaging political and economic matters. I am Uyi Agmofwebe.
And don't forget to include social discussions. Tune in every weekdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am Queen Agaba.
For insightful breakfast ideas, business summaries, sports highlights, international and local news perspective, I am Anthony Momodu.
Don't miss the in-depth analysis of current and political issues by the Global Morning team and experts. I am Jumai Manson.
Catch Global Morning here on Global Television. Getting on the action. I am Edikan Michael.
We are
the Global Morning team.
Let me see your phone.
Thank you, everyone. Everything with the beginning show has an end. So we're just going to start to wind down on the program at the top of the hour. But we can't forget that two things are very important given to this conversation. Jomaya is back on the show, by the way. Looks like you sneaked in, or as Americans say, you snuck in.
Sneak, all the same. But we're here now, and we have to wrap up the program.
I don't stay for inauguration, are you?
Not sure.
You can't forget where we come from.
Remember, I'm half Edo, don't ever forget.
Proudly, so I would say pride.
Proudly, half Edo.
Well, that's why we're leaving the show this morning.
Yes. And with that, we have to wrap it up on Global Morning. Thank you for allowing us to grace your TV set this morning. Join us same time tomorrow with another crew who will be handling Global Morning. And remember, have an amazing day ahead. I am Jubai Manson and my amazing co-host.
And we have more for you.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle with the ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.